before we start analyzing consciousness, remember these things. Tatwamasi, which means thou art that, that comes from Tantra. Tathata, which means thatness or suchness, comes from Zen. Ehie, asher ehie, means I am that I am, comes from Qabbalah. And be present comes from every damn self-help book ever written. So all these things are saying that the wokeness, the goal, the spirituality, whatever's happening is here, it's now, you're already it. And that's what the universe card is saying. It's all happening right here, right now, in this moment, but not that moment, this moment. That's a Sadhguru thing. If you ever watch Sadhguru, he's really funny. This is the moment, not that one, this one. Cool. So one more little subtle philosophy I want to share with you all before breaking apart into the tree of life is that everything I've researched, including the Thoth Tarot, has shared this similar idea. I'm not saying you have to have this idea. I'm just saying that generally a lot of the philosophy in the Thoth deck and other forms of mysticism has the idea that all reality is just consciousness experiencing itself in divine play. So if you read the Book of Thoth, which I definitely recommend you do with this course or after this course, you don't have to read it, but it's a good read. This is what it's a lot of the philosophy is. It's Eastern mysticism, it's Western mysticism. It's just there's this divine play, and that's what we've been saying for aeons. Cool, especially in Thelema, when Crowley talks about Nuid and Babylon, it's all this divine play. So 0 equals 2 philosophy. The idea here is Crowley believes that the whole universe, if you cancel everything out, if everything recombines, it will create this 0. And the universe manifests itself by a disproportion, by something adding and something subtracting. So a +1 and -1. And this happens in the mind too. So just for right now, let's jump to this slide. If you're looking at your computer or your screen, how do you know what it is? Well, that's the +1. You're seeing a screen. But you know what it is because of what it is not. So everything that is not is a -1. So if a +1, what you're looking at, what you're focusing on, and everything else kind of blurs away, and that's a -1. And that what allows you to separate and discriminate reality between different things in consciousness is this underlying 0. And that is actually the secret of the Magus card. His function is actually focus itself. So when we focus on something, when we give our attention to something, we carve it out of reality and everything else flows somewhere else, right? So that's one way to kind of think about the 0 equals 2 philosophy. So the 0, the void, the nothingness from which everything comes from in this philosophy is called Ein Sof in Kabbalah or Sunyata in Zen. It is the no thingness. It is everything merged. And from that comes everything, which is the 10,000 things in the Tao Te Ching. So we can look at this guy, something from nothing. That's crazy. Yes, it is. And that is the whole game of the fool. He's coming out of nothing. Even if we are not looking at this like physically, we are looking at this psychologically. For an idea to exist, immediately it creates its opposite that renders its existence. And this idea is happening throughout the tree of life the whole time, as we can see with all the symmetry. Cool, sweet. Any questions so far?
Is this like Schrodinger's cat? The same theory in psychology?
I think that's a great reference. Yeah, I think that can definitely be that. It's like the quantum unknown. It's everything but neither one, and that's the 0. And then when you open the box, yes,
when you open the box, it is something once you're looking at it. But the cat can be either alive or dead in the box. You don't know, and it's in that moment of not knowing, it's everything and something and nothing.
Yes, I think so. And you know what? I would say that the fool would be the 0, the closed box, what's going to happen. And the magus would be the open box, the awareness, the consciousness of something. So it's kind of like that's the binary universe, the 0 and the 1, the 0 and the 1.
I love this.
Cool. Yes. Thank you for that. That's so cool. I got to add that. That's awesome stuff. Cool. Any other shares or questions about this? All right, so another way we can look at this is really fun, is 1 dividing into 3, and then 3 coming back into 1. And you're going to see this general pattern on the tree of life. So we have 3 veils of nothingness. Well, let me talk about this first. So 1 divides itself into 3. Now, if we're looking at something like maybe Eastern mysticism or Tantra, they might say something like the oneness divides itself into the observer, the observed, and the faculty of observation. And then that recombines itself into the 1 again, which on a lower plane of manifestation, which divides itself into 3 again. So we see this in the tree of life, because the tree of life is a process of creation. It's God or the universe or the source creating itself, coming from above to below, as above, so below, Hermetic axiom. So above, we have 3 veils of nothingness. We'll get into the 3 veils in a little bit, but it's pretty much the lights, camera, action of the universe. So we have nothingness, then we have, that's the top one, then we have limitless nothingness, and then we have limitless nothingness with light. And I think physics are catching up with the whole light thing. You know, reality is all light at the end of the day. And we'll talk about this when we get into the high priestess and reflected light and how do we even see things. And it's wild. But anyway, we have 3 veils of nothingness. They come together to create Keter, concentrating in the one point, which is the Pythagorean monad, which is also the infinite point of view. And what happens here, that infinite point of view, to render itself, to experience itself and to know that it exists, it goes into 1, 2, 3. So we have Chokmah and then Bina. We have the masculine and then we have the feminine, the active and the passive. Now those 3 come together, they cross the abyss, which we'll go over in the next slide, which is pretty much, abyss is the separation between the above, which is the ideal, and the below, which is the actual. They come together, they manifest in Chesed right here. That's 1. Chesed goes 1, 2, 3 again. Then these 3 come together in Netzach, which is 1, and then they go 1, 2, 3 again. And then these 3 go into 1. This stuff is a little bit of a stretch. You're not going to see this it laid out like this in a lot of books. I just want to show you the pattern of 1 and 3, 3 and 1. You'll even see that pattern on the back of the Thoth card. You have 1, 2, 3 in 1. So you have remember, we have these 4 elements, right? Fire, water, air, and earth. Well, air, fire, and water are actually kind of above earth. Earth is the culmination of all of them. And that's why when we talk about the universe card, when we get to it, you'll see that it's Saturn and Earth. It does double duty. So there's only 3 spiritual elements in the major arcana system that we'll look at later. Cool. So 3 in 1, 1 in 3. Now, if you really want to dig into this, you can read Eliphas Levy's Transcendental Magic. I think chapter 3, he talks about the quaternary and the ternary and how that's related to the 2. He talks about 4, 3, and 1, and it's just like, it's wild.
So I have a question.
Yeah, question?
Sorry. I was looking at the Tower card, and I was wondering if the lightning bolt of the Tower card is a hint to the lightning bolt in the Tree of Life that we saw there.
Yes, it is. Yep. Yeah, totally. The lightning flash of the Tower is both, it's like both the creation of the universe, but also the destruction of the illusion as we're receiving this spiritual onrush of awareness. So it's like this crazy destruction and creation. And now the Tower goes from here to here, goes from Netzach to Hod. And so that, yeah, it's definitely the light. It's on the path of the lightning bolt of creation. And so is the Lust card right here, which talks about the Kundalini rising, which kind of rises up like this. And then the Empress card up here, which is this horizontal line, which is love itself. And so we actually have a subtle little doctrine here of love in the Empress is reflected in lust, but also reflected in the Tower. Now, why the Tower and destruction? Well, when you love something so much, whether you're loving someone sexually, romantically, or divinely, you die in your love of them. You love something so much, you get lost in your love, and it's beautiful. And that's kind of like the path into some would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Amazing answer. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. Cool. So let's get through this tree. So I'll quickly go through the basic tree, and then we'll go through like, well, actually, do we want to do the tree? We'll do basic tree of life, then we'll do Naples arrangement, and then we'll do Curly's tree. So I explained the tree of life in the foundation course, but that just to review, we have Keter, which is the source, the monad, the crown, and all the aces. We have Chokmah, which is will and force, meaning wisdom. That's the masculine side of things. That's the expansion. It's the big bang. Again, remember, whenever I say masculine, you could replace it with active because gender is so 5 minutes ago. It's 2021. And then Binah, which is form, which is the feminine. So Binah comes in and shapes the energy of Chokmah. They all come together in Hesed, which is the manifest universe, which is the 3D world. and it's called mercy. This is loving kindness. This is everyone gets a trophy. This is eating too much ice cream. And then just so we keep things moving along, we have Qabbalah, which comes in and says, all right, that's enough. And we have challenges in life to shake us up, because otherwise, you know, we get a tummy ache, we get fat, we'd get too good, we just, it wouldn't be cute. So Qabbalah is the challenges of life, it's strength or judgment. And then these two combine for Tiphereth or Tiferet, which is the harmonious place, the heart of the tree of life, also our higher selves. Club Tiferet is also where Osiris and Buddha and all the ascended masters hang out, because what do? They come from above here to tell us some cool stuff. And then this is like their hangout spot. So then from here we get Netzach. Now in Kabbalah, in like old school Hebrew Kabbalah, Netzach is a little bit more about individuation. And then Hod would be about submission. But in Western Hermetic Kabbalah, Netzach is kind of more about emotions and drive and feelings, and Hod is a little bit more about thought and intellect. And that makes sense, because thought and intellect, what does it do? It discriminates, it separates, it organizes, it puts things into form. And feelings and emotions and drives are like these continuous things, these feelings, these determinations, these desires. Netzach is big with desire. Hod is big with choice and organization. So they come together in Yesod, which is the subconscious, the autonomic nervous system, the astral plane, the place of dreams, and also the culmination of the whole tree. And then from there, it further manifests into Malkuth, which is the physical reality, which totally makes sense, because what does the autonomic nervous system do? It runs the body. Cool. Any questions so far? All right. Let's do the Naples arrangement now, because that's Aleister Crowley's like interesting remix of the Tree of Life that he wrote when he was probably tripping by a lake named Naples, but it's a really, really good thing to go over. So let me just move some of the stuff. Okay, so the Naples arrangement. Similar idea, just different language and different way to look at it. So we have the Kabbalistic zero on top. We have 3 veils of nothing. Out of these 3 veils of nothing come a point. The 3 veils are Ein Sof, Ein, which is nothing or without, Ein Sof, which is without limit, and Ein Sof Or, which is limitless light. They all come together in a concentrated point, which is the idea of position. That position becomes a line in Chokmah, and that line makes the position exist, because how can the position know it's in a position without relativity? So now there's a line, but we don't know how long that line is. So we need a third person to tell us how long that line is, because if I'm looking at you right now, you're the only thing that exists from my eyes. So for us to both exist, for relationship to exist existentially, we need a third party. We need a third viewer. So we get number 3, which creates the plane. So now we have a plane, we have a triangle, and everything is built of triangles, right? 0, 1 to 3, 3 to 1. We love triangles. I used to love squares, but now I'm all about the triangles. They're also good for architecture, and they're actually the chakras. They're actually triangles spinning really, really fast. So yeah, triangle 2021. All right, so now these 3 come together and they create the solid. Well, no, there's a 4th point that creates a solid. So now we're in 3D. So the 4th point is matter. 3D exists, substance. Now 5 is motion itself, Qabbalah. So motion comes to matter to make stuff happen. So now we have the idea of time. And when these 2 come together, the point, which was not conscious of itself, is now self-conscious, because with time, we have a past, we have a present, we have a future, we have motion in the ocean, sun in the sky, we can dance around the universe and have a self. So that's what's happening in number 6. The point becomes self-conscious. Now, Aleister Crowley beautifully says that, he says, I'm going to paraphrase him, but he says, an atom goes through countless combinations and separations, which it gains nothing from except its memory, which makes it something more than it is and worth the journey. So the idea here is like an atom, by going through the motion and the solid with the motion applied to it, it has a history. And though the atom can recombine and separate and still be the same atom, it withholds a memory. So the information increases collectively in the universe. I have a video on this. It's really weird. And it talks about how we're all just hosts of information. I'm not going to get into it now because it might scare you away and it's only the first class, but just have that in mind, that we have the sense of self by having time And that's kind of like the usefulness of motion applied to solid. So cool. So from here, Aleister Crowley talks about some Vedantic stuff, and that's because sometimes these three down here can be a little bit confusing. So he's talking about Sat Chit and Ananda. So Ananda is this Vedantic idea of bliss, the bliss of going through the motions of reality, which totally makes sense because we're coming out of the self-consciousness just after we have gotten motion. So now that we're kind of flowing through the course of events, there's a bliss called Ananda. Now, Chit is thought. It's kind of opposite to Ananda in this way, in this system, because Chit is thought, which separates reality into different ideas, into time as a concept, into Zoom meetings and schedules and moments and ideas that are happening right now. So Chit kind of like is the frame rate of reality, and Ananda is the flow of reality. Now, these two come together in Sat, which is being, which is the Vedantic being. So being is made up of thought and bliss, which come out of self-awareness. Now, these three come together in physical manifestation, which is the complement of the entire tree of life. Cool. Any questions on the Naples arrangement?
I did have a question about the Holy Guardian Angel and where it fits within the Naples arrangement.
Totally.
Would that be, so where exactly would that be? Is it the actual, is it below the actual for the self-consciousness, or is it somewhere like where Yesod is?
So the Holy Guardian Angel is supposed to be situated on Tippereth right here. Now, the Naples arrangement is kind of the tree of life, but in the most macro sense, like the whole universe in a way. So I don't know if we would really want to put, I don't know. I would look at the HGA, the Holy Guardian Angel, on a tree of, yeah, I would put them right here, self-consciousness, Tiferet, because the tree of life, whether we're looking at it existentially or not, we can also look at it as a grade system and how we ascend the tree of life in our spiritual evolution. And so the moment that we reach our HGA, our Holy Guardian Angel, would be arriving in Tiferet. So I would put it, yeah, here in 6. But I wouldn't.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, totally. And you can, there's stuff in like the AA and different in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which like the actual grade system of going up in the order is going through these different spheres. Whether you're actually doing it or not, I don't know. That's a maybe. Every organization is different, but yeah, so we would meet HGA up here. There's actually a couple veils there. Well, yeah, we'll go into this tree now because this tree kind of covers it. So we also have, yeah, there's a veil here, which is the veil of Paraketh, which is when we cross the tower, right? And then that's like a crazy awakening. And then we get our HGA, our Holy Guardian Angel. The Holy Guardian Angel is our higher self. In Thelema, it's like the biggest goal of magic is to connect, to get knowledge and conversation of your Holy Guardian Angel, which is just knowing your true purpose pretty much and knowing, like meeting your higher self. And then you do that. And if you can do that, that's awesome. You've done like a lot. But if you want to go even further, then you cross the abyss. And then there's another veil called the abyss. And that's when you actually die again. There's like one death here. It's kind of like an ego death. And there's the big ego death here. And then you get all the way up to Keter. Cool. That's kind of more thelemic stuff, but you can apply it to anything, like connecting to your higher purpose. Yes, hand up, Marina.
Yes, I didn't know we were doing the hand thing, but definitely.
Yeah, totally. Hand thing works. That's cool.
So I don't know if this is important or not, but you said there was like a masculine side of the tree,
yeah,
and then the side, and it puzzles me that the planets listed on the male side are very feminine, Neptune and Venus, and then on the other side we have Mars, super masculine energy. So is there a reason for that, or?
Yes, that's such a good insight. And I'll tell you what's kind of going on here. So in the tree of life, we have this neutrality here, the pillar of the neutrality, and then we have force and form. So what happens is they interact. So we have masculine energy here that goes into the feminine. Now, when this goes down to here in number 4, you have both masculine and feminine. It's like a fountain. So all the water, all the energy that was in these 3 are coming into this one. So this one, Hesed, is actually feminine, and this one's masculine, Geburah, and then this one's feminine. Yeah, because they interchange. So if you think of like a fountain getting material from each side, and then giving it to the other side. And the reason why that happens is because the two are connected. And there's constantly this interplay. So if we're thinking like something, if we're looking at it through like the tantric lens, everything is Shiva and Shakti, and the dance between Shiva and Shakti, and they're not like separated. So that's how I view it. Generally, if you're reading like certain materials, it might show you like, okay, this is masculine, and this is like feminine in a masculine form, and this is masculine in a feminine form, and then they come together here. And that makes sense because this is fire. This Sephira, Netzach, is all about fire, but it's also Venus. So it's like the active part of the feminine, where this is the passive part of the masculine. It's Mercury, but it's like on a passive state, which is why it has connections to submission. And then they both come together in the moon, which is always moving around with its phases between the two. So yeah, it's kind of both. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
The way I would look at it, this is how I conceptualize it, is the pillar on the right, which is the pillar of mercy, is all about expansion. And yes, it says, keep going, keep moving, you can have it all. And then the pillar on the left, which is the pillar of form, or the pillar of severity, is you can't have it all, because if you have it all, there won't be anything to have. There won't be any unit of experience or thing to hold or whatever. So the side on the left is like the nose, the beautiful nose that allows for things to exist. The limitations, right? Because Saturn is all about limitation. Some other stuff, the 4 parts of the soul. And this is, and again, by the way, everything I do in this course is going to relate back to the Thoth deck or Aleister Crowley in some way. So just that's the context. That's kind of the vibe for this. But this is Aleister Crowley's separation of the soul. So we have the Yekida, which I honestly don't quite understand what it is, but it's like the highest spiritual part of the soul, which is connected here. And then we have the Hia, which is like the spirit, which is like I find to be kind of like the will, the higher will, the spirit. And then we have the Neshama connected to Binah right here. Neshama is our intuition, our ability to receive. And this is what we're doing, what we're connecting with when we're giving psychic readings. And then this whole hexad right here is the Ruach, which is the mind, the intellect, which is centered around Tiferet. Tiferet is like the nucleus of the Ruach, in where HGA lives. So this is mind, logic, all of that. And then we have the Nefesh down here connected to Malkut, which is the body and the animal soul and the lower desires and all that alchemical stuff. Now, that division is important to know for Aleister Crowley's deck, the Chokmah, the Binah, the Tiferet, and the Malkuth, because that's also how the court cards are organized, and that's also how the sacred name is organized over here. So we have fire, water, air, earth, and we have that sacred name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, or Yehoah, or Yo-Wicca-Wicca-What, however you want to pronounce it, because it's unpronounceable, but it's one of the sacred names of God. And we know that God's got a lot of names because she's been doing work. She has a lot of looks. She has a whole universe to keep up with. So one of her names, and one of my favorite names, I have it tattooed on me, is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, because it describes the creative process of the tree of life, of the court cards, of the elements. And we love the number 4 because for seasons, for directions, we love 4. Okay. So the court cards, how they show up. Well, oh, by the way, look at this beautiful thing. It took me forever to make. I love it. I could stare at this all day. So this is the entire Thoth deck on the tree of life. We have the small cards, the numbered cards on the Sephirot, as you can see here. We have the court cards in the position of the sacred name as it would appear on the tree of life, according to Crowley, by the way. So we have the Yod, He, Vav, He, we have the knights here, we have the queens here, we have the princes here, which is our holy guardian angel, right? And then we have the princesses down here, which is us, the sleeping princesses that have to get woke by the prince. And again, I gotta admit, some of this stuff is antiquated, some of it's sexist, unfortunately, the old esotericists, the old men with too much time on their hands, they put women on the bottom and men on the top, but that's just something to be aware of. So I try to think about passive and active and passive, but I mean, yeah. So, and then we have all the paths, the 22 paths, which are the major cards going in between all of the Sephirot. And that's another way you can kind of look at active and passive. The active is the major arcana cards intersecting all these Sephirot, and the Sephirot are the passive holding places of the energy. So now let's look at some Thelemic cosmology. So Thelema is Crowley's religion that he invented after having some crazy channeling in 1904. He channeled the Book of the Law. I highly recommend you reading chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 3, if you miss it, it's fine. It gets really weird. I think it's cool, but yeah, chapter 3 is wild, so be careful with that one. But chapter 1 will make, I don't know, it made me cry when I first read it. It was beautiful. But that's his channeled writing. You totally don't have to read Book of the Law to work with the Thoth deck. I just kind of softly recommend it because it can be wild. It's totally up to you. Remember, everything permitted, nothing true. But let's talk about some of his big deities because they do show up in his cards. So most of the deck of the Thoth deck is Qabbalah, followed by astrology, followed by Thelema. That's kind of like the third major ingredient to know about. So we'll just kind of briefly go over the situation here.